Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton, making his second appearance of the week. That's double the amount of Arkansas I'm usually used to. It's very dangerously high exposures to Arkansas football detritus. And therefore, Senator Cotton, I think we should stay away from sports and stay focused on immigration.
Good morning to you, too, Hugh.
Senator, here's my main concern. I saw in the meeting with the president, I thought it went well. I was encouraged when there was an announcement of a whips meeting. A whip, John Cornyn and Dick Durbin and Steny Hoyer and Kevin McCarthy. But since that time, I've seen announcements of other meetings and other bills in the House and in the Senate. Is this going in 18 different directions, or are we going to be able to pull it together into a comprehensive bill that makes 4 changes to DACA, to border security, to chain migration, and to diversity lottery?
Hugh, I wouldn't say it's going in 18 different directions, but there's more than one direction. But, Congress has 505 elected members who come from different parts of the country and represent different viewpoints, and that's part of the way you get to one final result, is to air those differences and have debate on them. The Goodlatte-McCall bill that was released in the House yesterday is, I think, a very good bill. It contains a lot of very good provisions, and I hope the House moves forward with it and votes and sends it on to the Senate. Is it going to pass in the Senate as it's written? No, of course not. That almost never happens with any kind of legislation. But it would be a good vehicle for the Senate to focus on the 4 key parameters that we outlined with the president earlier this week and that you just mentioned. Some kind of legal protections for the DACA population, but to deal with the negative consequences of that decision. 1, security, both at the border and around the border and inside our country. Ending chain migration once and for all citizens, because if you make these illegal immigrants newly legal, they're going to be able to create a whole new chain of immigration. And then finally, the diversity lottery, which I think most Americans now realize serves no real purpose and is even dangerous, as we've seen from the terrorist attacks in New York City. That's the contours of a reasonably sensible, discreet compromise that will help us solve this immediate problem, but also give the American people more trust and faith in the two parties and help build some trust between us. And then maybe, as the president said, we could go back, in the future and pass future immigration legislation.
What sort of screening is imagined for the 800,000 DACA recipients, Senator Cotton, so that we are assured that they are indeed not criminals, not felons, not violent? Because nobody that I talk to is really in favor of repatriating the vast majority of DACA recipients who are in the category of, ordinary human being.
Hugh, that's up for debate. The narrowest criteria would be anyone who currently holds a DACA work permit. I think that's something just south of 700,000 people. People like Senator Durbin and Senator Graham and Senator Flake would like to see a larger population be given legal protection, say, for instance, those who have ever held a DACA work permit if it has lapsed, those who would have been eligible for DACA by its own terms but didn't apply, or perhaps extending their criteria. But the criteria, as you say, should always include protections for serious crimes, to include misdemeanors like drunk driving and sexual assault, to make sure that people are gainfully employed, that they're not a drain on taxpayer resources, and so on and so forth. Whatever the population criteria is, it has to have those protections for American citizens, that anyone who gets legal status is not a threat to public safety nor a drain on the public fisc.
All right. Now, in terms of the security element, I've been arguing since 2006 in print and before that on the air, we need a long, strong, double-sided fence over hundreds of miles of the southwest border. Not all of it, as the president acknowledged. We got rivers and mountains for which it does not apply. But has that got to be a part of any deal here, Senator Cotton?
Yeah, of course it does. As the president said yesterday at his press conference with the Norwegian Prime Minister, look, a wall, a fence, a physical barrier, whatever you call it, it is not the only solution at the border. In the Army, they taught us in infantry school that an obstacle without observation is not an obstacle. That's why when you go into Afghanistan and Iraq, you don't just build a secure perimeter, you build guard towers on it, and you put people in those towers. Because if you don't have people observing the obstacle, in this case a wall or a fence, it's not really an obstacle. That's why you also have to hire more Border Patrol agents, why you have to have cameras and ground sensors and so forth. But a physical barrier, a fence, a wall, it works.
Okay, last question.
To say that a wall doesn't work is like saying fire doesn't work. Of course it works. You may not like it. You may not want to pay for it. You may not think it's aesthetically pleasing, but of course it works. That's why people put fences around their backyards. That's why we have a fence around the White House.
All right, last question. Probability of passage of a bill.
Well, I certainly want to pass a bill. The president said all along he wants to as well. What needs to happen is that the Democrats are going to have to start granting some concessions. The president has granted them a major concession already, that he is willing to provide legal protections for this DACA population. That is a huge concession for the president and for many of his key supporters. But Senator Durbin and some of the key Democrats have not yet granted any. They haven't even granted a fig leaf for that, Hugh. They've granted nothing more than a pine needle. And even the concessions they claim to have granted on border security really don't even secure the border. And I, for one, like most Senate Republicans, to include much of our leadership, believe that DACA in exchange for mere border security is a bad deal.
So the probability of a deal, percentage-wise?
I'm always hopefully optimistic about these things.
That's still not a number. I need a number, Senator.
You're not going to get one from me.
Oh, doggone it. Tom Cotton, always a pleasure. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 3, straight ahead on the Hugh Hewitt Show.